How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you. And how are you doing?
Pretty good. Pretty stressed due to finals week of school, but it's
Of
okay.
course. Yeah. I got plenty of children who've been through it. So how old are you?
I'm 27.
Oh, wow. Okay. You're still in school at 27.
Yeah, I
All
just
right.
went back, so
Good for you, man. It's hard to do. My son did the same, my eldest. He took a couple of years off and then he went back to finish, which was it's very hard to do. Yeah.
yeah. How old's
All
your
right.
son?
Oh, shoot. It's difficult. I got six children. So 21, Rose 21, 27. He's the same age as you.
Oh,
What
okay.
month were you born? What month were
May.
you born? Right, he's March 15th.
Oh, that's cool.
So we bought. I went. Well, my wife and I went through the same as your parents. I'm guessing, yeah.
Yep, yep.
Which is
Is your oldest Alex?
no, Oliver's my oldest. Then Alex is next year. He's probably 25. Yeah, that's right, 25. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Not waiting around. So
I saw that you and Alex performed a couple times as Gene Loves Jezebel, right?
yeah, he does. I love him when he does, But he's got his own band. But I love him to perform with me, and it's always fun. I always give him the easy shows to do. So, but he enjoys it, and so it's good. The family thing is a lot of fun. So,
Yeah, I saw him you gave him the microphone, I think, during bruises, during like the backing vocal, and
all
he was
right,
singing
right,
like you. I think he
right.
was trying to get your Welsh accent, and I thought that was cool.
Plausibly, yeah.
So I wanted to start by asking, like, what do you think your music fits into? Like, what scene or subculture is that?
Well, I think over the years, like every record we ever made, from single to album, had different lineups on it. The bass player, the drummers, the guitar players would change. And the only consistent for the first five records was my brother and I. But I think in the early days we appealed to more arty, gothic. Then we became a little more glammy. Then we became too glammy, too poppy, which was not my influence because I always preferred the more edgier stuff. And to me, it was always an expression that was far more important to me than success. So I think we kind of, in many ways, well, at least for my taste, we chose the wrong path.
Do you think that was due to like producers or the changing of the band members or
I think there's a dynamic. We were all relatively young men. There's a lot of competition. I mean, I was raised a socialist. My father was a union leader of his union for his whole career. So I always had that background where you brought people in and you shared. Um, but I discovered that was pretty unwise. If I go back, I would not have done that again. I was just meant to, because I formed the band. It was my band, so it was pretty foolish of me. I did all the work, moved to London, paid for the demos. Did all the early sacrificing, and then I shared it with people who came in later, and they ultimately betrayed me. So that's another story. But I learned a valuable lesson. So,
yeah, that makes sense. They
didn't
just
pardon me.
they took advantage of your
Yeah, they did. Yeah, there was a lot of there was some difficult relationships. I mean, I'm a twin brother, and he was always a little jealous. He's very talented. Didn't really feel that he was getting, what he merited, though I don't know what more he could have had, than what he did have. He was adored by the women, and he had respect, particularly in the early days. And that was kind of frittered away because I think he kept working to make it more and more and more shallower and emptier, and less. But that's my opinion. You could argue. I mean, you could argue that he accomplished all he could with what he had, the tools that he had. There you go.
did you feel less fulfilled like when you guys started being on MTV and your videos were playing all the time and you're performing everywhere?
I thought that was rubbish. Yeah, I really did. Yeah, I enjoyed it. in the earlier days. You say early days, you're still talking about 4, 5, 6 years, from beginning to, there was a full life in that, a full story. I think the time we got to the MTV, it was fine with Desire, and I think as far as it went, when and Heartache, when that was just as far as we should have pushed it, in my opinion. But then our original guitar player, who was actually the original member of the band with myself, had a nervous breakdown, and I scrambled and brought in a guitar player from the Kim Wilde band, Chelsea, and briefly with a band called Gen X, not Generation X. He was with them for about 6 days. But he got us through the tour, which we couldn't have finished. It wasn't really that important. Looking back, we should just cancel the tour and, things had just got reorganized. But we kept going, and but the direction of the band changed. So he came from a Kids in America, right to work, poppy, London. It was totally away from where our origins, which was Welsh. You had the twin dynamic, and lent more to our backgrounds. Suddenly, it became this multipolar thing. So,
How do you think your Welsh heritage played into like your early music?
oh, I think a lot language. I think. I mean, I learned early on to write from my own experiences. Far more important for me. Songs are should have. It's more than writing a hit song. They should have meaning and depth and some substance. I mean, it's better to be wrong and to sing about it than, or even to have the wrong goals. So yeah, I mean, I think that poetically it played into it. The landscapes. A lot of the songs are about emotional. But yes, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, like that song, "The Cow." I think you told me had a lot of Wales influence on it.
Yeah, it did, but it had a country Wales influence.
Oh, okay.
Because in Wales, well, most of that song, I mean, apart from the the first verse and the chorus answer is my brother's song, which was he wrote a lot of the music, but Ian did the guitar on that. But his song was do you remember that song? Do you happen to see the most beautiful girl in the world?
Mm.
So you don't remember that song? It's a famous 60s, 70s song. And I remember saying, well, we should change that. Did you? Because in Wales, if a woman is unpleasant, I mean, you might call them a bitch. We call them a cow. Did you see that cow?
Oh,
So there's a little humor in there.
oh, okay.
But my
I love
parents
that.
listened to a lot of American country music, and I have a lot of older brothers, so we had a lot of music coming in. Much older than my generation. I mean, the music I listened to um, as an 11-year-old was Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath. So my brother would like T-Rex, but T-Rex weren't for me, and so
Were
not
you
that I
ever,
didn't like them, but I mean, I saw them for what they were. So.
did you ever become a fan of like the later 80s, like hair metal, heavy metal type thing?
No, not at all, which is a weird thing. Because I always thought that we were a rock band, particularly in the early days, and even bordering on the harder side. Upstairs, Screaming for Emmeline. I don't know if you know those songs. Bruises. They've got much more of an edge to them. And the big paper of the day, the metal paper, was Kerrang. You remember that? I don't know if you know that. You
Yeah.
must.
No, I know Kerrang.
Yeah, but they were big fans of ours, so they put us in there with like the Def Leopards and whatever. I mean, I was never into the metal side, AC/DCs,
Yeah.
the new
I
wave of
noticed
it. Huh?
because you mentioned like you didn't feel as authentic with the later music. Like I saw that you were a big critic of like the Motion of Love type of
I think that's
songs.
a piece of shit. Yeah, I think it's garbage. Yeah, yeah, it's garbage. It's so empty. It's so
Yeah.
empty. It's pathetic. But you got to think we started our first songs with singing, about trauma and incest and having sex with your mother for God's sake. And then you're doing. I always tell people it's like the Beatles in reverse. It's like the end. You can imagine the Beatles going from Sergeant Pepper or Revolution to Love Me Do. So but that was more his. You could really tell his slant on music as opposed to mine. His was softer, but I always wanted to, like I said, to me, the song had to have something, in some way it had to stir something, a response, if nothing else. But his was much more softer, you know, I've met every girl on every street. I mean, he's just had such soft lyrics. And that's how it ended, really. And they preferred to go in that direction. Jealous and Josephina, it's like Coca-Cola. So, but that's what they believed in. So I can't. But whatever they were doing was not Gene Jezebel. Wasn't the twins. The dynamic, the absurdity. Anyway, yeah.
You think like too, it wasn't Gene Loves Jezebel because maybe the guitar started taking like a front seat, or
Well, that's the whole thing. Gene Jezebel was never a guitar band, still isn't. So what, you can't put a Gene Loves Jezebel record on and know who it is until you hear the vocals, the twin vocals. Um, so I mean, I think from our era, they weren't really guitar bands, all that. You could argue that with the punk rockers and the post-punk. The guitar players didn't start coming in, from the metal side. They did, of course, but not from the British rock side. I mean, we know who they are. Who the Bunnymen's guitar player, and but they're not guitar heroes per se. They've got an interest in the Cocteau Twins, for example. They've got a lovely guitar sound, but you wouldn't regard them as virtuoso musicians.
yeah, they're just kind of an added layer to
Yeah,
enhance the
yeah,
vibe.
it's atmospheric, and I mean, I toured recently with the Mission, which was fantastic, and but I could see the difference from where they at one point we were kind of from the same spot, but we moved in so many different directions. But theirs was not a guitar based; it was anthemic, small, mid-paced, just like U2, mid-paced, never really, goes very far. It's nothing. It's a vocal and their little guitar bed. That's it.
Yeah, it's very anthemic. You're right, and it seemed like I really appreciate your music because your guys' music is like chaotic, but also
Right.
pop, oriented
Yeah, I
sometimes.
think we were pretty diverse. I think, but we didn't set out that way. I mean, really, it was we'd rehearse, or we might have the four track and have an idea, and my brother and I would never work together. He'd have one idea for the song, and I'd have another, and then it basically came down to what the producer thought, which was the better. So he used to get pissed off a lot because a lot of the time, particularly in the early days, most of my ideas went on this and the direction that, and I ended up singing most of the songs, which would piss him off. But you couldn't argue with the producer. The producer chose to do that.
Yeah.
Um,
I noticed too, you mentioned like the split between you and your brother. It's kind of like, would you say that you're more of a live musician and you don't really copy the record verbatim? Because I noticed that you changed the lyrics a
I
lot of the
don't know because get so bored.
time.
So no, I mean, I just don't know how you could sing the song the same way every night. I mean, you do the basis, but it's no. I think you should enjoy it. It should be experience for you. Otherwise, it's boring as hell. I'm been fortunate. My voice is pretty strong, so I get away with it. But even the day when I played my brother, he would get the audience to sing the choruses, which would piss me off. Because I thought they paid to see us. We should at least give them what they paid to see. This is in
Yeah.
the 80s, so now it's I still feel the same way. So
Yeah. I noticed too, so like in the early 80s, your guys' fashion style kind of changed. It kind of evolved, especially yours. It seemed like, well, at least in the Bruises music video, it was a lot of black and leather, and then as it evolved into,
yeah.
very colorful.
It was never any leather. You remember in the early days we were broke on the dole. We had no money whatsoever. So we didn't drink because we couldn't afford to drink. Um, we were basically wearing plimsolls and black t-shirts. And then I just tear them up. But we were always into beats and you know I was like, and then as we became a little more successful, we had more money. I started going to Arab shops and buying silks and satins and coats. And I was when I was 19, I was married to a woman that went to St. Mary's School of Fashion Art. So I married an artist, so she could make clothes and things, they developed from there, but it all came from me, all that stuff. Yeah. And I just thought clothes, I remember, clothes are fun. Performing is fun. It's theater, I mean, I remember seeing Peter Gabriel and remembering him from the early Genesis days when he was magnificent to my eyes,
Mhm.
had so much drama and color and just beauty and absurdity. And then you see him in later years, he comes up with a potted plant in the middle of the fucking stage. It's like, what happened to the genius of Peter Gabriel? Because it's a visual thing too. So,
Yeah. So do you think that your silks and everything, they really symbolized your music or what you were bringing to the table?
well, I think I think it came from, like I said, when I was 16, 17, being married very young to a fashion student. So she got a lot of stuff from Nigeria and India, and it was a hangover from the late 60s when I was what, about 10, 11, 12 years of age. There was a lot of velvets and color and scarves, and I always loved that. So it could never stay black for me. It's and go on stage. I think there has to. It should be something of a performance. I mean, it's kind of odd that all the bands that do nothing are huge. But I should have just put a pair of jeans on. So
Yeah, definitely. You want it to
yeah,
be
but I enjoyed it. It
extraordinary
was
to see.
it's theatre. Sid Barrett or Jimmy Page. The Stones and I mean, High Rocks, New York Dolls. I mean, the Sex Pistols. They're all glamorous bands if you think about it. Driven by style and fashion. So,
Absolutely. How did you get into the hat?
that style again in the early days. I love wearing floppy hats. I didn't wear too much in the 80s. I did, but I remember my road manager saying, look, don't wear a hat. People are going to think you've got a full head of head. People are going to think you're bald. And you think of the Edge and Dwight Yoakam, they can't take their hats off, right? But I love hats. I think they're fun. Like I say, dressing up is fun. Clothes are fun. They're not a
Makeup too, right?
uniform. You're not saying anything. Beyond that I'm alive and I'm vibrant.
Yeah. Um, so when you were writing music, did you feel like you had something to prove?
I think in the early days, yeah. And until even when I departed Gene Loves Jezebel over what I had a lot to prove, and I had to prove with my later records that I could write songs and I could sing and I had some depth. I mean, I've written some really great lyrics, amazing lyrics, and still writing them. So I think now, but mostly it was for me. I couldn't, whenever I've done a song, I had to love it myself and wanted to play it. I could never leave it. And I've fallen out with so many people because it wasn't where I wanted to be. So, and it wouldn't be released unless I felt that way. I'm less, you know, I'm less Catholic about it now, but in the day, it was very important to me. Every vocal. I mean, the vocal lyric and the vocal are the most difficult things to do in music. You've got to be on to get the vocal right. You've got to have the right people around you, the right, you have to have the tempos right. You have the tuning has to be right. The right. It's such a difficult job. I mean, who wouldn't want to be a drummer or a bass player? You're done in 2 days. It takes months and months for a singer and to get it all right. It's the hardest gig of all, by far. And you still have to perform it and deliver something. There's so many different ways of doing it. But it's also the greatest because you're so involved. The singer tells the story. Nothing happens without the singer. Otherwise, you should just make an instrumental record.
Do you chase like external validation, or is this all for just an audience of one for your own?
Well, starting, it's to for your peers, the world, your parents, your school, everyone that thought you were nothing. I mean, I'll show you. I remember when I first started, my best friend said, "Oh, you ain't going anywhere," and I said, "We'll fucking see about that." That's the drive. now you have something to prove to someone, you know. So it gets harder to get on because you have less and less to prove, you know.
So you don't feel the drive anymore to make more
Oh,
music?
I do, yeah. I'm working really hard now, but it's become. I'm not so much. I'm only proving it to myself. I don't put anything out there unless people go, "Wow!" I don't care if 5 people hear it, but I know the 5 people that do hear it will think it's magnificent, you know.
Hmm.
So that's where it's. I want it to be good, and it has to be good for me. So I deliberate. I work far too much on them. I will agonize over every single syllable, every word, every nuance. Just drive myself insane. But once I've done with it, it's gone. I'll never play it again. You know? And that's probably why it changed a lot on stage. I never listened to our songs. You know, I've had different players in the band, and we've done shows, and they've had to learn the songs, and I've had to, for the first time, hear them again. I'm like, oh my god, I didn't realize we did that. Oh, that's the real arrangement. So, because you change it, you know, all the songs change, the arrangements, the parts. And I love to improvise too. So I leave spots in the song, and the band know that they have to watch me. Where if I decide that I'm not going to come into that chorus or I'm going to go another direction, they have to watch my hands for tempo and lifts and even stops. So, but they enjoy doing that. So they tell me because it keeps them on their toes and they never gets dull. You know.
That's awesome. How do your kids feel about your music?
Well, I never play the music at home. I mean, they know they see me working at it, and I got my own little space here, and I'll have a pack of cigarettes and a few beers, and I'll just go and till something turns up. But I'm really, I'm without wishing to appear arrogant. I'm really good at initial responses, writing the initial melodies, and usually a chorus. My agony is the back end, trying to finish the thing, telling the whole story, and I get driven insane when I'm working with an engineer or a producer, and they're not, they don't have it where I want it, you know. So, but they don't. They're all musicians, and they all love music. They've got great taste, and they're all educated, college educated kids, and they love jazz and they love the blues, and they're particularly drawn to jazz, you know, so which I'm not, but that's what I hear. I mean, I listen to music through them, and then my daughter's obviously more into the young, you know, yet the younger women, you know, women in their 20s that, you know who they are. So the sex symbols, you know, the Taylor Swifts of the world, the Del Rey, whatever her name is. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't know what they think of my music. I never asked them. So
I noticed too that like you have a unique dancing style whenever you're on stage. It's very expressive and
yeah, remember when I started out, I always tried to. Well, that was the whole thing. I didn't want guitar solos, and if Ian would play guitar parts, I didn't want it to sound like anybody else. And I wanted us to sound like even if you listen to Shave on My Neck and the early stuff, it doesn't sound like anybody else. You know, Screaming for Emmeline or Bruises. It's
Mhm.
my style, you know. So in those days, my brother was more Susie. He became better as time went on. The time he got to Immigrant, he kind of figured it out a little bit more. But yeah, I always, like I said, I thought it was always a performance, and so, and I love to dance, if you can call it dance, or express myself. So it's one that keeps you. You're in incredible shape. You come off a show so high, you know. We used to finish shows, and I go off to the clubs with members of the audience, be up all night, you know.
Oh wow.
I love people. I enjoy people, you know. So.
What do you what do you think about like those, labels like goth or new wave or whatever?
Well, when I think back now, I look back at some of the reviews and I can see that the people writing them are just kids like we were, you know. So they had to call it something, you know. So I remember when they called it positive punk, and I thought, what is that? I mean, I could hear a punk element in what we did, but positive? I don't think it was anything particularly positive. It was actually nihilism when I think about it, you know,
Oh yeah.
completely kicking out, striking out, you know. Um, So I mean, it didn't bother me in the slightest. I mean, I didn't. I hated being called goth in the day, you know. And to be quite honest with you, I still do. I think it's. I mean, my friend Michael Silvola, he's more leaning towards that. And I just went to I never go out. My wife now is because we've raised 5 children, started going out. We went to see the Cure show and the Susie show, recent
The
one in
Susie and the
LA.
Banshees.
Yeah. And I'm like, it's ridiculous to me that they still all do their hair a funky color, dress up in black, spiders, I'm just like, well, I mean, do what you want, but grow the fuck up, So it's fine.
Do you,
I don't care. I don't care. My daughter loves all that stuff, so
so you don't mind being like grouped in with like those festivals that are
I
like
don't think we are grouped in. I think that's why we're not big. Because you could talk to anyone from any genre and there's something at Jezebel they would have heard and liked. But you can't put Motion of Love next to Upstairs or Bruises, and you can't put Stephen next to Every Door. You're not going to a Heavenly Bodies fan or a Kiss of Life fan is not going to be an Immigrant or Promise fan. So I think we appeal to different people at different times. I think my brother and the guitar player basically jumping from one bandwagon to the next. So I
right?
remember we got back together in '97, and brought James and Rizzo and the rest of them back in, and Steve just goes, "Oh, should we make a gothic record?" And I'm like, "What the fuck are you talking about? You don't make a gothic record, you make a record." So that's from where I come from. You don't sit down like the Cult and get Led Zeppelin's first 2 records and make a record. You
Right.
can, but it's so dishonest and it's so, it's manufacturing, that's not art. So maybe that's the difference. I don't see it that way. I think you should write naturally where you are, where you are is what you should be writing about. There's enough turmoil, pain, drama, crises in this planet. There's plenty of subjects to write about. You don't need to write, baby, I love you every fucking day of your life, or how sexy you are, particularly when you're in the 60s and 70s. You're
So
the only one. Come on.
you would say it's mostly media manufactured and it's like artists putting themselves in a weird little box.
Yeah, but I mean, people seem to want to be in that box too. They all dress up in the same way. And I mean, I guess we need to be part of a tribe, I guess. People follow football teams. It's the same thing. But music, it should be more diverse. I love to see all kinds of artists. So some of the best acts I've seen, no one's ever heard of or heard of again. I've seen them all sorts of places and I'm like blown away. So, but it's a tough old game to get into.
Yeah, yeah. Do you find that there's pretty strong diversity of like ages or gender in your audiences?
Well, yeah, we are. Our audience of the day they all have children now, so their kids like us.
Okay.
It's weird. I mean, I've met 18-year-olds going, "Oh man, I love you," but I go, "Why are you listening to the '80s?" But then again, I remember I love the Ronettes and the Shirelles, and I love Phil Spector. I mean, if I could see them now, I would go to see them. So I get it. Yeah. But not when you're 18. But yeah, what are you gonna do?
Got my nice little Discover cassette right here.
Yeah, lovely, great,
Yep.
awesome.
Do you
I have
think
an
that
immigrant's cassette. I don't know where it came from, but all my stuff in the UK has been disappeared. All my pictures, everything I ever had is gone. So,
oh no.
well, I know where it's gone, but I think someone's taken it or destroyed it. But that's another story. But it's a great shame because I used to save every rehearsal tape, all the live recordings. So I had a massive library. But it's no longer. So
Sorry to hear that.
yeah, me too. It's heartbreaking, but particularly my pictures. So, but carry on. So,
Do you think that these young people, like 18-year-olds in the scenes and like going to like your shows, do you think they keep it alive? And do you think that's a positive thing to keep these
but it's
old
positive
times?
because I remember I played a acoustic show in New York, and I won't say the band I was playing with because when I was opening acoustically, and there was like 300 people in this small club, but they're all young and all exotic and made up. As soon as I got off stage, they all left. And I said, why aren't you wait to see them? And they said, well, we didn't come to see you, which is nice, because I think in some way I've ended up on this place I always wanted to be, on the fringe, you know. There's a beauty to that. I get to travel, see the world. Uh, People come to my shows, take me out. The few people that love me adore me, so it's wonderful. I'm not such a celebrity, with exceptions. And we went to Manila, and there was like 300 people at the airport, which was mind blowing at 4 o'clock in the morning. But that's a rarity. But it's nice, you run into people you haven't seen for years, and people cry when they meet you, and because I don't get out to play that often, at least outside the US,
It seems like you have a really big Latin American fan base.
Yeah, I wouldn't say big, but it's decent. Yeah, yeah. It's we do have a following. I have no idea, but
You're like, I don't even
but
know how that happened.
well, I mean, I just don't get it. The Latinos just love English left field music,
That's
Bobby
me, I
D.
guess. That's me, definitely.
But
That's
yeah,
me,
well, you got
definitely.
Morrissey, Cure, but it was true in the day too. I remember someone saying, "Oh, you should do one of your better known songs in Spanish." I thought, now I think, damn, that would have been such a great idea, just line by line, L'amor. But yeah, but people, I remember going to Argentina for the first time in I think '87, and there was like 10,000 people came to see us. It was mind blowing, and they couldn't speak any English, but they knew every word, and they'd sing along to the songs, and it was just wonderful, incredible, So.
That's so awesome.
So that was nice. You have no idea you come from a small place in Wales, a little industrial town, and village, and then suddenly you've reached your tiny way in your own little tiny way all over the world. It's nice.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
All right, so we got about like 5 minutes left, and um, I wanted to ask what do you think is your magnum opus?
Oh, I don't know if I've written it yet. So, but I mean, there's songs I'm really proud. My favorite record that I've done with my brother was Immigrant. The whole record, I think, is a masterpiece, and even Promise. But that's our masterpiece as a band. I think it's like 5 people contributing. We're just making music and thinking about nothing else. Not no one knew who we really were. So it was the most pure thing that we ever did. And the thing that I've done on my own, which is my favorite, is Why Me. My solo record is an acoustic record, which I'm really proud of. So that makes me very happy when I listen to that record. It's a great time in my life. Yeah.
That
So
was like a very cathartic album, right? Because you were going through a lot of self-doubt, I think, at the time.
yeah, well, I've been seriously damaged and betrayed by my brother and the people that you know, given a large. They wouldn't be in the band if it wasn't me. I hired every one of the motherfuckers, and they betrayed me, stabbed me in the back, and I'd suffered so much to get Gina Jezebel where they were, always taking care of them. They had such an easy ride, relatively. But I came out of that, my self-doubt. I'd be betrayed by my twin brother, who you trust more than anyone. It's beyond brother. It's much more. So that betrayal was stunning and shocking. But I forgave him, and we restarted the band 3 times more. But every time the same thing happened. So, um, but then when I did Why Me, I was really the happiest times of my life when I was not with my brother. Put it that way. So when I first came to London, the all the players that I met and played it over a year I enjoyed that. And then when I left and did my solo record, that was amazing. I'd met my wife. We were having our first child. We've been together like 32 years now, and
Wow, congrats.
so thank you. And so I was with the love of my life, a new son with her, and I was making an acoustic record, and it was just magical. So, but I've enjoyed all my solo records too, with Triple X and whatever else. They're great records. Love Lies Bleeding is a masterpiece, I think.
Yeah, I
Chloe
love
Hill,
Love Leading.
the great,
It's a great
even Giving
album.
Up the Ghost, I think is really underrated. So, but I did it with different players, and I've always enjoyed playing with different people. It's a good thing, you know. It shows that you're not a one-trick pony. Most of our bands only have one trick, you know. So
Yeah, your solo album still had that distinct sound. You
yeah,
sound
yeah.
just.
Well, people ask where the Jezebel sound comes from. Well, it comes from me because I was the guy that sang most of the albums, you know. Even up to House of Dolls, I sing most of that record, including all the what were the B-sides were actually triple A's, you know, great songs, and I didn't make a record because there was a conspiracy. But so it was me, always the last guy with the producer, you know, with Immigrant Pro, John Brand, John Leckie, Walsh. It was always me, Jimmy Iovine. I'm the guy who found the producers, the photographers, the um, and production. They didn't know what to do. Then very few people have the courage to make a decision in a studio. It's a big call, you know. What's the best guitar part? How's the tempo? All those things people don't realize, you know. So it's a lot of work, and you work with someone like. My biggest regret is not continuing work with John Leckie because he was a brilliant producer, you know. He was fantastic. But things went wrong. Ian had a nervous breakdown, so the band changed. And, I think we should have called it a day after House of Dolls. So, you know, that should have been it, you know. So then they
I think
started
you're.
calling their own. Like Love and Rockets went to do their own thing. Now they can do Bauhaus. It was never became fragmented, you know. It was always Bauhaus and Murphy and Daniel and David, and, you know. So that was the way we should have left it, you know. But we got into the fight. Then I was making my version of June of Jezebel to show that I'm a much better artist than they'll ever be in their lifetimes, you know, on peanuts, pennies. And they were making dumb records for millions of dollars, and nobody bought them. You know, they killed our bass, you know. So the music
Yeah,
is still there, but they killed our bass, you know. So they go up. What are you gonna do?
your music will live on forever in this
Yeah,
era.
well, people will matter. That's the weird thing about the live shows. Is actually the recordings are the most important things, you know. Um, the live show is basically it's like going to church, you know, but yeah, but
It's a
it's
good way to
not the
put it.
same as listening to the mass at home, you know, the choir. The record is always the best. It's wonderful to see the human being. You know, you can cry. You know, I've seen artists that have made it. Felt really emotional watching.
Mhm.
It's not the same as coming home to the record. You go in there really to just to bear witness. You know, it's a religious experience. I think. You know.
Yeah, I can't wait to finally see you live. It'll be awesome.
Oh well, thank you. I hope you see us when we have a full show. So, which I tend to do mostly these days. So I much prefer to play for an hour or more. You know.
Yeah, yeah. All right,
Well,
looks like my meeting's gonna end in 1 minute. I'm not sure
okay,
why.
where are you? Where are you based?
In California by San Francisco.
Oh, okay. We've been up there, not for a while though, but yeah. All right.
Thank
Well,
you
I'll
so
chat to
much for
you.
doing this interview.
Oh,
I
you're very welcome. Okay. Thank you, Max.
thank you, Michael.
You got my email and you got my Zoom, so
Thank you
take
so
care,
much.
bro. Okay, you're very welcome. Bye bye.
Bye bye.